So it's been a while. Ah, Surfer, you're huge. What happened? Did you become a mutant? Your mutant powers have activated. Which leads us into our video. So, X-Men 97 has released.
Oh, I'm happy with that one.
Now, here's something interesting. We started watching this, and I thought, let's watch back to the last episode of the original X-Men, the animated series, because I want to remember where it left off. Because what I'd read was it was going to carry directly on from there, and it did. Strangely, it turns out my upbringing with the X-Men from like when I was a young teenager, like your age or a little younger, was from the comics, starting with like when the new X-Men. Well, actually, it started a little bit with the old X-Men, and then into the new X-Men. So I read through all those stories and like the amazing John Byrne artwork, as you heard in some of those other videos of ours. And I knew the characters really well. I knew the stories really well. But you grew up with the animated series, and this was your knowledge of the X-Men.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so that's what you thought the X-Men was, right? So when we watched back on this, I went, wait a minute. That's a story from the comics, but they've injected these other characters. Why is Gambit in there? Why is Rogue? Why is Jubilee in here?
Gambit was one of my favorite characters, so I'm happy he was in there. I love Gambit.
I just assumed, because I don't remember very much about seeing that original series, right? I remember bits of it, like, the very first episode with the Sentinels in the shopping mall and all that kind of stuff. But I forgot it was like Rogue that they were chasing. I thought that maybe the stories were from the later, like the 90s series, or the 90s comics. But what they did was they took a mishmash of stories from like the 70s and stories from the 90s and characters from the 70s and the 90s and just mashed them all together. And it worked. It was fun. It was cool.
It was awesome.
And the new one, the X-Men 97, of course, there's only the first 2 episodes so far. There's probably more now when you're watching this. But they're doing the same thing. You don't even know that one character that they had in there. You thought it was Sunfire, but it's Sunspot from the New Mutants, right? It's like, oh, cool. They even made him look good. Like the art in this one is better than the original one. They're sticking with the model a little bit more tightly. The characters don't morph around. The animation's still not fantastic, but it's quite good. But the art style is better than the original.
And of course, the writing's great too.
Yes. So I had to explain to Surfer, and this is embarrassing, who Sunspot was and the New Mutants, because you never read those.
I never read the New Mutants.
You never read those. No. We have all of those.
I gotta read them.
Yes, you do. And I thought, again, they're mixing characters together, so this is great. I can't wait to see who else they come up with and what other stories they hopefully successfully mash in there. So tell me a bit about what you experienced with that series. Now you're starting to read the old comics, and how is that coming from the opposite side that I did?
I think it's very interesting because it's telling the story in a whole different way. Now, obviously, some of the characters' personalities are the exact same. You got Wolverine being awesome still. But then there are major characters in the comics that weren't major characters, kind of like side characters in the TV show, like Colossus. Colossus didn't show up until like the 3rd or 4th season.
He must be hard to draw.
Yeah. But they did a good job with him. But then you've got Gambit was a character that was just always in there from the start, and they did him great as well. But then you've got characters who were just there, mismatched all over the place, and now when you're reading the comics, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But they did it great, and it was a really cool job that they did.
Yeah, it's like we went back and I looked at how they handled the Dark Phoenix saga in the animated series, and they took some actual poses in that from the original comics. But then when they're all there kidnapped by the Hellfire Club, I'm like, why is Gambit there? Why is Rogue there? It's literally just and then others were missing. Like, so it was
like Colossus and
Did they have Nightcrawler?
No, not until very late.
Yeah. So again, he was he's been there since they introduced the new X-Men. But missing from the series. So it's really interesting to see how it's all mixed up. So, I mean, X-Men was the first series that I really collected religiously. But then I just loved the way that they handled the stories and the characters. What was different about them than all these other, especially the DC characters, was it was all about how dysfunctional most of the characters were and their relationships with each other and society, especially with the X-Men as they progressed along. It really became like a social commentary that could easily have been like a story about race or gender or anything like that, right? It's just a real expose of how shitty people can be. And it's not like, the characters in the X-Men were angels themselves.
Except Angel.
Yeah, we went there. So they had plenty of issues, and they even just like, some of them were even suffering from mental illness from all the stuff they've gone through, right? I thought it was just very real. So like you never see that with like, like Superman or any of these other characters where it's just about their abilities. And the ability stuff was always secondary to the relationships, and I loved that. So I started collecting all sorts of offshoots, like when the New Mutants came out. I thought, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And then, that series eventually became X-Force. And we had X-Factor, which was, kind of a return to the original characters, but in a totally different way. They were kind of like mercenaries now and, doing jobs for money. And it was a totally different experience. And lots of these characters got their own series, right? There was Wolverine that, just took off, right? He was a side character that became the most, beloved character of all of them. And, he had his miniseries, which we have. And then, when we got signed by Frank Miller. And then we have, his own series. And then they went off with their side, like alternate history things like, the Old Man Logan and all that kind of stuff. Gambit had his own series. They kind of had little mini series with each of them. Cyclops had one, Colossus had one, Nightcrawler had one. There was the X-Men even themselves kind of broke off into different factions. There was the X-Men Red and X-Men this, and it got too much after a while, right? It was a little overwhelming. If you wanted to follow the story, you had to buy all these different comics just to follow one storyline. And that kind of annoyed me, right? But having collected them all, then it becomes. I mean, that's like, I've got like what 4 long boxes of just like X-Men and X-related comics.
I can see them right there.
Yeah, well, there's some of them. There they are.
There's 3 of them. Oh, and there's a 4th one on top.
And there's also there's 2 up there of the short boxes of signed ones by Terry Austin and all that. It got a little overwhelming, and since we're now getting rid of a lot of our collection in order to get some of those bigger keys and things, it's time to. I've been going crazy getting all these X-Men things up. I got a long way to go, but when we're done, I think it's time to have a sale.
Yeah,
X-Men we did our Christmas sale. And we did a 1-day leap year sale, but this is going to be huge.
Yeah,
because this will be not just like an X-Men sale.
And Deadpool.
Yes.
Deadpool is bringing back all the characters. Now that Deadpool's coming to the MCU, he's bringing the X-Men with him.
Oh, well, I mean, look at what they did. I was sure by the end of Loki that they were going to bring the X-Men or Deadpool into it, right? And then when we just saw that recent trailer for Deadpool 3, and he's there in the TVA, and it's like, yes! It's exactly what I'd hoped. And we saw like Loki pulling all those threads of multiversal threads together and creating basically a new universe out of all of it. This is how they're going to introduce them all, right? But it doesn't mean that they're all going to like, oh, we're going to take all the X-Men from one series and that's going to be them, or from the Fox movies only sort of thing, right? They're basically free to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
So they can introduce characters that never existed in any of the movies, or like they did in the cartoon, mishmashing different characters.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, they could take some storylines in that from from the original comics, but then mashing other characters or just mash, story ideas together. The sky's the limit, and I hope Marvel doesn't screw this up. I'm not one of those bashers that hates everything that they've been doing lately or anything like that. There's been some disappointments,
Definitely.
but what I get disappointed with is when they basically disrespect the feelings that people were holding onto about those comics from before, right? I mean, it's people my age that grew up with those comics, especially the X-Men, right? And this is what we know. This is what we love. Your age, you had like the X-Men series, right? So it's a different thing. And then younger kids now, I mean, they don't really have the same sort of nostalgic sort of feelings to it, but that's not their market. Their market is me and you, right? Different things. So if they can please both by sticking to the nature of these characters, then they'll please everybody. Like, don't just change things. Like, I mean, my worst fear is that they'll have a Fantastic Four movie and bring in Silver Surfer as a girl, which I've heard a rumor of, right? It's like, I have nothing against girls. I have nothing against them, making some alterations to a multiversal character, like, using Samuel L. Jackson for Nick Fury, even though he looks nothing like he did in the comics, doesn't matter. The character worked, right? But to just change a character for the sake of changing it to try and hit some demographic,
You ruin what the character was
Yes.
and what it stood for.
It doesn't make sense, and it pisses everybody off. It doesn't, include more people. It excludes everybody. So just please don't do that. Don't do that to us, please, please. So let's wait and hope. But in the meantime, no matter what they do with the movie, we will still have these comics, and we can keep revisiting them, right? And we have, even more than we own with that Marvel Unlimited app. My favorite app ever. Hey, we probably sound better right now than we ever have. Because now is the first time we're actually using some lav mics here. And could this brand be better named for us? Look at this.
Comica. Wait, which way am I turning?
I don't know.
This way.
I'll show a close-up of it. Comica. I mean, come on. And no, we're not being paid by them. Hey, if they want to sponsor us, great. We're ready for that. But no, I love the name. And I've been reading reviews, trying to find the best ones for us at a good price point. And these ones come up, and it's like, oh, come on. You have to get it now because of that name. Anyway, let's have our Mutant Madness sale. Let's put a sale price on every mutant-related comic we've got.
I'd love to sell some of my X-Men comics, except my X-Men 98.
Yes,
that's very precious. That's precious to my heart.
My X-Men 101 signed, keeping that. Yeah, there's some that are never going, but and then we can eventually move up and get an X-Men 94 that's
or
a
giant size X-Men.
We will eventually get our giant size X-Men. That would be great. And if we could get one that was like signed as well, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Here's the basically an overview of the ones we've got up here right now and what we're going to be having on sale. So dive into our eBay store, have a look around, and I'm not going to put like a fast time limit on this. I think we'll run it for like a month or two. Let's see if we can get some momentum going with this. And then once you're very approachable, you can always just email us. Once you become a customer of ours, and you can just chat to us and tell us what you're looking for. We got 4,000 odd comics that are waiting to put up on eBay still. So we might have something that you want. Just talk to us.